Smith during his criticism, and no sign, at least right now, that he's going anywhere. Let's bring our panel in of Paul Rieckhoff, host of the Independent Americans podcast, founder of American Veterans for Ukraine. Tiffany Smiley is here today as well, veterans advocate, former Republican congressional candidate in Washington State. Welcome both.
Yes.
Good to see you both. Thoughts first on how this whole waltz thing played out, and we could talk about Pete Hegseth in a second as well.
Well, look, the media is very quick to jump on the negative aspects of it, saying he's being fired and having speculation, but clearly it's just a personnel restructuring, and Trump knows where to put people to best serve this country going forward. So that's simply all that it appears to be.
Shuffling of
personnel.
Not the deck chair, so to speak. Well, what do you make of it, Paul? Do you read into it in any way?
Chaos. Yeah, more chaos, more tumult around our national security and defense apparatus at a time where Walz has been under the crosshairs. Laura Loomer and others have called for him to be ousted. And he's not really ideologically in line with the Trump crew. He's more of a Reaganite, especially on national security and defense.
Well, isn't Rubio? Rubio used to be, too.
Yeah. I mean, I think the real issue here is that it's going to put Signalgate back in the forefront because he's going to have to go through Senate confirmation hearings.
Yes.
The Democrats are responsible and the Republicans are responsible. They're going to ask about Signalgate. They're going to continue to dig deeper because reporting keeps coming about how extensive the use of Signal is, even this week, saying that Hegseth potentially hardlined a computer to the Pentagon just to use Signal. So we don't know if they're still using Signal. And I think that's going to come to the forefront. And we're not going to get an official bipartisan investigation. We are going to get an IG report, and this might be the closest thing we get.
But I guess theoretically, Tiffany, the confirmation hearings, to Paul's point, for Walz, because he will have to do that to be the UN ambassador, might not be great news for Hegseth.
Well, he's a former congressman. I think he'll
for
do
him,
just fine.
maybe
like
he gets through it.
Yes.
But it'll bring all of this up for Pete Hegseth, who's still the defense secretary.
Look, the press on Pete Hegseth out in the media has been 100% negative 100% of the time. And what they're not reporting on is that recruiting numbers are up, that our military is getting lean and mean and actually turning into a fighting force that we need for the next generation. So when you look at it from that lens, there's been no good news even reported on Pete Hegseth.
But that is a fair, the point on the recruiting is a fair point. So I want to just have one comment from Paul, and then we'll go back to Pete himself, because that is true. We do get distracted from that. The president's pumped it up, and those numbers have gone up. I don't know if it's all Pete or President Trump, but they're better numbers now.
They were trending up before Trump took office. But the state of the economy is not going to hurt either, and laying off hundreds of thousands of people around the country will be good for military recruiting as well.
But this seems like there's some energy. Is that fair?
It's absolutely worth focusing on, but it's not more important than whether or not the Secretary of Defense divulged classified information on Signal. That is absolutely important because it could potentially mean people's lives.
So you think he's out at the end of the day also?
I don't know if he's out. I mean, Trump, I think, will ride him as far as he can. I know that the controversy is not going away because now his former advisors that he fired are now going to the press and leaking around him. And those stories are going to continue almost daily. We've got a new story revolving some kind of sloppiness or indiscretion around national security information. And I don't think that's going away.
Go ahead, Tiffany.
Well, the press is just looking for any little thing to report negatively on Trump's administration. And you know what? You know what was worse? The failed departure in Afghanistan.
That's a
that
totally
Joe
different
Biden.
That's a
I'm just making a point. You want to talk about chaos?
I mean, the issue at hand is whether or not.
And we did lose service members. 13 service members were killed.
Is disclosing confidential. He might be doing it right now.
42 are catastrophically injured. So that's real life.
So both could be true. You're right. That was a disaster. But this could be a real issue in terms of how it was handled. Do you think? I guess the larger question. Paul and I have had this conversation. You know where he stands on it. The larger question with Pete from the beginning was he qualified from day one to be the choice? Should he have been the pick? And is all of the way this is all playing out kind of saying, well, you know what? Maybe he wasn't the best guy for the job.
Well, look, again, it goes back to just what's being reported. I think Pete, at the end of the day, what is he doing good? Are there things that maybe need to be cleaned up? Sure, and I think they'll get to the bottom of it, and the American people, there will be transparency on it. But at the end of the day, President Trump had total faith in him to do the job. And it looks, what I like about him is that he's not a bureaucrat. He's not a part of, the D.C. system. He's an outsider, and that's why Trump won it.
I know we're getting, and it's the news of the day. It's my fault, by the way, because I've been the one asking the questions. But we are getting distracted by all this personnel news, which is important. What about the actual news? Paul, any thoughts on Ukraine? It was interesting. They had the town hall last night. They asked President Trump what he said to Zelensky. He said, well, yeah, you got to make a deal. You got to cut a deal at the Vatican. And we did get that minerals deal. Do you like it? Or?
Well, first off, you also have to mention the fact that Rubio is now pulling 2 jobs, which are pretty significant.
Yeah.
That's unprecedented. We haven't seen that since Henry Kissinger.
Right.
The combining of those 2 things is very, very significant. And, if he cans Hegseth, which he could do by the end of this segment, Rubio might be Secretary of Defense, too.
One time that happened when we were on.
It happened.
Somebody was announced.
On Ukraine, here's the deal. I think Trump actually made a mistake. mistake. He stepped on his own good news story. This is actually progress. This binds
the minerals deal.
Yes, this is good news for Ukraine. It's good news for America. It's a major step forward. It's a big change in tone from the Trump administration, and it does provide some hope for the people of Ukraine. I think it's good for NATO. It's good for the world, right? And it's a step forward. It's a win for Trump. And instead, we're talking about Mike Waltz because that continues to compromise his overall momentum. So net, this is good news for U.S., good news for Ukraine. It doesn't come with total guarantees on security, which is an issue, but net, it's good for Ukraine. It's a big change from where we were just a couple weeks ago.
Do you like it, Tiffany?
Well, I think we agree on something. You know, it is proof of President Trump's commitment to getting peace in that region. And, you know, unfortunately, under Joe Biden, the American people, the American tax dollars put in $350 billion into Ukraine for their pension systems, their waterways, their infrastructure. You know, back home in Washington State, we have wildfires and floods, and Biden wasn't promising to come help us.
I think the dollar figure was a little lower. It's a lot. The dollar
it's a lot.
The deal doesn't
the number he uses.
But the deal doesn't pay that back.
But this mineral deal is a win. We know that economic security is national security for Ukraine, and it's good for America and it's good for Ukraine, and it's a great way forward.
Well, Ukraine, they didn't want it to be a loan like that, so they got what they asked for there. Didn't get a total blanket security guarantee. But to Paul's point, it's good news. Do you feel like we're going to get
together, right? It felt like Trump and the team were walking away from Ukraine.
Right.
This locks us in.
But maybe they're going to make a deal here for Ukraine.
And I think at the end of the day, it's good for our economy. It's good for our national security. It's good for their national security. And it is a win for Trump that he deserves credit for.
But a bigger deal, like a ceasefire.
Bigger deal,
maybe.
But what happens next could be sanctions on Russia. Like if Lindsey Graham or someone else continues to push forward, they will now demand sanctions on Russia. And it seems like there's support in the Republican Party for that.
All right, last word on that. It seems like directionally it's better.
Well, you know, it's interesting. Everyone was negative and down on Trump after the Zelensky meeting in the White House, but I knew this is how he negotiates. This is how he gets deals done, and it's clear he knows how to do it. The master negotiator, and this is just the beginning. He has been very clear he wants this war to end as soon as possible.
That was quite a picture, wasn't it, the Vatican?
Amazing.
All right.
Big change.
All right, thank you both. Good discussion on important issues and some that maybe aren't as important, right?